For the first time since 1979, the United States just opened the door to Iranian oil. Not as a leak, not as a loophole, as an official license from the U.S. Treasury. This week, while diplomats talk peace in Switzerland, Washington made a move that could reshape global energy markets. But this license expires in 60 days. So what did Iran actually promise in return? Let's start with who was involved and where this happened. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance led talks with Iranian officials in Buggenstock, Switzerland. Qatar and Pakistan acted as go-betweens. At the same time, in Washington, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent issued a separate but connected announcement. He authorized a general license allowing the sale of Iranian crude oil, petrochemicals, and petroleum products. This wasn't a side deal. It came directly out of a memorandum of understanding signed last week between Washington and Tehran, the same framework behind the Switzerland talks. The Treasury license permits Iran to produce, sell, and deliver crude oil, petrochemicals, and petroleum products. It even allows Iranian oil to be imported into the United States when needed to complete a sale. That detail matters. The U.S. has not meaningfully imported Iranian oil since sanctions began after the 1979 revolution. The license also covers banking, insurance, and transportation services tied to these oil sales. Payments can be made in U.S. dollars. A few countries are excluded from benefiting, including Cuba, North Korea, and Crimea. In exchange, Bessent said Iran has committed to two things: free and open transit through the Strait of Hormuz, and allowing IAEA inspectors back into the country. When this happened, and when it ends, this license was issued this week, but it comes with a deadline. It runs through August 21st. That's a 60-day window, not a permanent fix. This timing connects to the broader ceasefire. The current truce traces back to an interim deal reached in April, then extended last week for at least another 60 days. So both the oil license and the ceasefire are now running on similar clocks. If a final peace deal isn't reached before these windows close, everything could be back on the table, including the sanctions. But that is only part of the story. Knowing the deadline still doesn't explain why this is happening now. For that, we need some background. Washington first sanctioned Iran in 1979, after revolutionary students seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held diplomats hostage. Over the decades, more sanctions piled on, tied to Iran's nuclear program and its support for groups Washington considers terrorist organizations. Those sanctions didn't stop Iranian oil from moving. They just changed who bought it. Independent Chinese refiners became the main buyers, taking advantage of steep discounts while most countries stayed away. Before the sanctions returned in 2018, countries like India, South Korea, Japan, Italy, Greece, Taiwan, and Turkey were also major importers of Iranian crude. Then, earlier this year, things got worse. On February 28th, U.S. and Israeli strikes hit Iran, setting off a new war. Iran responded by blockading the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. blockaded Iranian ports in return. Oil prices spiked sharply during that standoff. Here is where the real political problem sits. The United States wants Iran to stop threatening the Strait of Hormuz and to accept nuclear inspections. Iran wants relief from decades of economic pressure. Neither side fully trusts the other to hold up their end first. That's why this license is temporary, not permanent. It's a test. The U.S. is betting that easing oil sanctions now will buy enough goodwill to keep Iran cooperating on inspections and shipping access. If Iran holds up its side, more permanent relief could follow. If not, the sanctions snap back. This also explains the deconfliction work happening in Lebanon. A wider regional war involving Hezbollah and Israel could collapse this entire framework, oil license included. So all these pieces, the ceasefire, the inspections, and the oil deal, are tied together. If one breaks, the others are at risk too. But here's the part getting less attention. Since the interim deal was reached, oil prices have already fallen to their lowest point since before the February war even started. That's a real, measurable market reaction, not just diplomatic talk. And there's another detail worth watching. Advisor Jared Kushner reportedly helped design a separate plan with Qatar. If Iran's frozen assets are ever unfrozen down the road, That money would be steered toward buying American soybeans, corn, and wheat, with the U.S. and Qatar overseeing the process, rather than going directly to Tehran's government. So even as oil sanctions ease, Washington is building financial safeguards around any future money flow. What does this mean going forward? For energy markets, allowing Iranian oil back in a legal trade could add more supply at a moment when prices are already falling. That could push prices even lower for drivers and businesses in the U.S. and elsewhere. For global trade, countries like China, which already buy discounted Iranian oil, now have a chance to do so without violating U.S. sanctions. That could shift how oil flows between Iran and Asia. For Iran's economy, this license offers real relief, but only for 60 days. That creates pressure on Tehran to keep cooperating on inspections in the Strait of Hormuz, since losing this access could hurt badly. And for Washington, this is a calculated bet. Ease pressure now. Hope it builds enough trust to finish a final deal before August 21st. But that is only part of the story. Mediators have only described this as encouraging progress so far, not a finished deal. The license could be extended or it could expire if talks stall. So let's return to the 5 questions. Who? The U.S. Treasury and Iran, with Qatar and Pakistan as mediators. What? A temporary license allowing Iranian oil sale for the first time in decades. When? Now through August 21st. Where? Decisions made in both Washington and Switzerland. And why? Both sides are testing whether trust can be built fast enough to finish a final peace deal. For now, the oil is flowing, the ceasefire is holding, and the clock is running.